Hey YouTube, me again. So today I'm going to share with you my testimony. I was born to a Jamaican family. My grandparents both Christians. My mum's side and my dad's side both grandparents were Christians. My parents, however, weren't. I was brought up kind of. My parents liked to party. They liked to, they were quite fun. We used to have family holidays all the time. But when I got to about the age of 10, I started to notice that their marriage was breaking down. By the time I was 13, 14, I'd found out about two half sisters, that I loved dearly, and I was able to build a relationship with them, and I'm just as close with them now as I'd love to be. My parents both split up, they divorced. My mum moved to a deprived area. Once she moved to that area, I became very inquisitive of the people around that area, and I got involved in quite a lot of stuff. Got involved with smoking weed, messing about with boys. Me and my best friend, we used to just drink. We used to drink a lot of alcohol and get drunk all the time. It wasn't long before we'd both lost our virginities. I'd lost mine to a guy a lot older than myself. She had lost hers on a drunken night. She thinks that someone spoke to her, who knows. She's probably just drunk too much. And she was kind of date raped. She doesn't remember the act, but it happened. So that was quite how we had kind of started off our lives. By the time I was 16, I'd ran away from home, started knocking about with gangs, bad people, got involved with robberies and stuff like that. So I ended up in prison at 16. I came out at 17. 2 weeks later, I was pregnant. After I came out of prison, spent half my pregnancy on tag. So I came out from them, and I got back in this relationship. This guy, I'd been seeing him since I was about 14. He was really, really abusive to me, mentally, really bad, mentally abusive. He'd make me feel really horrible about myself, make me feel like I wasn't worth anything, make me feel like all that people would want me for is my body, that they would never value me as a person. I was kind of, from a teenager, that was spoke over me quite a lot. I was told by another male, that was a family member, I was told that I would only be wanted for the slit in between my legs. So I think I kind of grew up with that in my head, and that guy kind of reaffirmed that to me. So I kind of saw myself as, an object to be used by men. So I just gave into that, and yeah, I was used by quite a few men. Not blaming them, I was just as bad. And I'll just give myself away freely. Wasn't long after that when I was still hanging about with these gangs, and some guys had run into my flat with guns looking for some people, pulled out a gun next to my son when he was 1. I managed to get him out of the way, get him out of the room. We hid, and we managed to get out of the flat into my friend's flat upstairs. Came back down got 2 guys, pools of blood everywhere all over the flat. I moved out not long after that, and I stopped talking to my ex-partner, and I tried to start again, met another guy. He was just as abusive, another destructive relationship. Came out of that relationship, got into another relationship. He was just as destructive and abusive. He would cheat on me. I found out that he had a girlfriend and a kid. He moved out from her, come to live with me. Then I found out that he was still seeing her, so I kicked him out. Then the girlfriend, her and about 30 people beat me up on a car park. I was beaten quite badly. My face was out there, my eyes was massive. Yeah, I got really badly beaten up by her and the whole of her town, I think. So that was that. So I moved on from that relationship, and the guy that I was first with, he was almost like a safety net to me, like a bit like a boomerang. Whenever things would go wrong, I would always get back with him, and I was probably the same to him, because we'd always end up back together. So I got back with him because I just thought, I'm not going to get any better. They all treat me the same. So I got back with him. He continued to be abusive. He continued to treat me badly. Then I found out he had had a baby with someone else. So I stopped seeing him again, got into another abusive relationship. At this point I was quite depressed, so I'd taken a shine to clubbing, and I used to go out clubbing like and take like party drugs and take ecstasy. I was still smoking weed, still drinking quite heavily, but I would only really drink when I'd go out, and I would never really get drunk. I was one of those people that could drink, but I was never drunk. I would take ecstasy and I would just party the night away and forget about all of my problems, and then the next day I would go home to these abusive relationships. And that was my life for a good 6 years, until I came to a point where I got fed up and I was just like, you know, God, I need you. Like, I remember praying to God and saying, you know what, God, I know that you're real, but I know that a lot of things I've been taught about you aren't true. I want you to lead me to somewhere where I'm going to hear the truth about who you are, about your word, you know, about your grace. And I, you know, genuinely meant it when I prayed it. The next day, I think it was, I went to the town centre. I was given a leaflet by a girl that I knew from that deprived area. She was telling me that she'd given her life to God, how her life had changed, and I was just quite like, really? You're a Christian? Like, kind of thing, like, because I always believed that Christian had the big hat, the long skirt and the boring life, and she seemed quite happy and quite normal, and she was dressed normally, and I was thinking, well, she doesn't look like a Christian, because I had this view of what a Christian looks like from the church that I was brought up in. So that kind of opened my eyes a bit, and I thought, and then a few days later, another girl, was singing. There was the church were singing worship songs in the town centre, and she had called me over, and I was like, Saf, and I said her name, and she said, you know me? I'm like, yeah, I remember you from when you was a little girl. You used to go to play scheme together. You were just a little baby, and I couldn't believe that she was in my city. You know, because I met her in a different city. I couldn't believe that she was in my city singing for Jesus, and that she was all grown up. So I took the leaflet off her, and I was like, maybe this is the answer to my prayer. So I thought, oh, I'll go to that church. So I think it was that day was the Saturday, and the next day was the Sunday. So I told my sister, right, we're going to go to this church, we're going to get ready. So we got ready to go to the church. On the way to the church, my heel broke on my shoe. So I was like, no, we can't go to the church because my shoe now. But we won't not go to church, we'll go to my uncle's church. So we went to my uncle's church, and that day he told me that God had a plan for me. But I just thought, you know, whatever, Christians say this stuff, do you know what I mean? Didn't think anything of it. So I went home, still the same, not changed, didn't give my life to God. And the following week I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to that church the next week. So it came to the following Saturday, it was the night before I was going to go to the church, and I looked in the drawer for the leaflet, and the leaflet was gone. So I went to sit down on my chair, just kind of like, I suppose it wasn't meant to be. And as I like sighed and went to sit on the chair, I remember someone walking past my living room window. I was like, who is this guy walking past my window? So he posted something through my door, so I went to my door, and it was a leaflet to the same church. Obviously I know the guy now, he's now married to my sister, and he told me that my house was the last house where he had posted a leaflet, and I was like, wow. So I went to the church service, finally got there. The pastor had preached, like, literally I'd come to a point in my life where I'd realised that I was going around in circles, and that, you know, my life wasn't getting anywhere, that, you know, it was just the same thing over and over again, the same destructive relationships, the same weed, the same feeling lean, the same feeling high, the same parties, the same, everything was just the same, going round and round in circles but getting nowhere. And I'd come to that realisation, and the pastor preached on, you know, people's lives going round in circles, and I was like, wow, God is speaking to me. So he gave the altar call, and when he gave the altar call, I remember my eyes were closed, my sister's eyes were closed, but both of us has raised our hands, and we both gave our lives to God. And that was, like, you know, brilliant, most amazing decision I made in my life. I gave my life to God, and over time, you know, I was set free from the addiction of cigarettes, the addiction of weed. I was set free from, you know, wanting to give myself away freely to men. I was you know, God took away my desire for sex completely. You know, I was just able to stay pure, and there was no battle with it. And you know, I was just completely set free. All of my hurt from those relationships was healed to a degree. There were certain places that I didn't let God in, but all that I'd given to God, He had healed and He had set me free. And you know, my life was really in a good place. I was doing well in church. I was happy. I had a good job now. You know, I passed my driving tests. Internally, I was at peace. My life was fine. I was at ease. I wasn't in no destructive relationships. You know, I was just free and happy in the Lord, and I was on fire, and I was bringing people to church, and people were getting saved, and everything was great. And then after about 3 years, I started to want a relationship, but because I hadn't given certain areas to God about the relationships that I'd been in the past, and how these men had made me feel, I didn't really understand it too tough. So when I gave my life to God, I didn't really feel like I needed to speak to God about these hurts or these things that I'd gone through, because I didn't realise how deeply those stuff and those words had impacted me. So like after 3 years, I wanted a man. And I wanted to get married. People were getting married around me. My sister was getting married. One of my friends had got married. Another girl, and everybody was getting married. And it just seemed like nobody wanted me. And I just believed in my heart that I didn't fit that church stereotype of what kind of woman a man would want. I thought, you know, why would a man want a girl like me with a kid that's, you know, been on drugs before, not like hardcore drugs, but you know, the ex-weed smoker and this and that. Why would someone want someone like me, you know? And that's what I just kept telling myself. And I told myself that, you know, no one's going to want to marry me. And I'd still stayed friends with that safety net guy that I'd been with since I was 14, and the soul tie I don't think was ever broken. And I never asked God to break it. I don't remember ever asking Him to break that soul tie. And I still felt like I loved him, and I just thought, well, it's never going to happen here. And you know, because I didn't deal with it, over time it grew, and it became the temptation that the devil used to lure me. And because I wanted it so bad, and it came to the point where I wanted it more than I wanted God, and I left church. Lo and behold, the devil's a liar. So of course it didn't work out the way I thought it would. He got his cake and he wasn't interested. He left me, and I found out he had a girlfriend, and I was just left by myself, depressed, just as before. So I smoked more weed than before, I drank more alcohol than before, and I became worse than I was before, just like the word of God says, that the state of that person will be worse. But this was just the beginning of this track of destruction that I'd set myself on. So I started to, you know, smoke weed again, and drink again, and party again, and take ecstasy again, and get involved with guys again, and, you know, just wasting my life, really. I remember the one night, I saw this guy that I used to talk to. We were just friends. There was nothing to it before. But I saw him anyway, and I decided that I was going to ask him if he wanted to come somewhere with me. So we went on this date. Long story short, I ended up pregnant. When I told him that I was pregnant, he left me. But he came back, and I thought that, you know, it's going to be great. I'm going to have a family, which is what I'd always wanted, because prior to me leaving church, my son's dad had just stopped seeing him. He'd decided he didn't want to see him anymore. So I was kind of craving like a father for my son as well as a husband for myself. And I was thinking, oh, I can get it myself. God's not going to give it me. I'm not going to get it in the house of God, so I'm going to find it myself. And I trusted in my own abilities, and my own abilities failed. Of course, you would know that. So basically, this guy, he got me pregnant. We were playing happy families for a while until I went into labour early. My best friend died 2 weeks before that. She had had an epileptic fit in the bath, and she passed away. That really, really hurt. It really messed me up for a long time, and I think the pain that I felt of losing her is probably what set me off going into early labour, especially like the circumstances that she died in, the last conversation that I had with her, knowing that she was unhappy and she was sad. And that really, really, really affected me, because we'd been best friends since we were like in school. So after that, basically, I went into labour early. I gave birth to my daughter in the house on my own. It was very bloody, very gory, very horrible. And I just remember screaming and crying out to God and begging God, don't let her die, don't let her die. And as I said that, I felt her move. I phoned the ambulance. The ambulance came, they said she was dead. I knew she wasn't dead because I'd felt her move like not long before that. So I told them that I'm not listening to them, I need to get another ambulance, I'm not moving, because they kept telling me I need to push my placenta out or I'm going to die. But I was more concerned about my daughter, so I said I'm not pushing out anything until I get a second opinion. So basically, they called for another ambulance. Another ambulance came, they said there was a slight pulse. So they rushed her straight off to hospital, laid me down on my living room floor and told me to start pushing to get this placenta out. They realised that my cervix had closed with my placenta inside of it, so I was rushed to hospital, straight into theatre to have my placenta removed. I remember getting to the hospital and seeing my pastor there and seeing another pastor from our church fellowship, and both of them were there just waiting to pray, and I just remember thinking, like, you guys are so amazing. And this time I didn't know whether my daughter was alive or dead. They wouldn't answer any questions. So I refused to have surgery until they told me what state my daughter was in. So they had to check, and they told me that you know, she was alive and that they were doing all they could for her. So at that point I agreed to the surgery, but I told them that they wasn't allowed to put me to sleep because I wanted to be awake, so that as soon as they finished I could go and see my baby. So they did the surgery, and as soon as the surgery was over I asked to see my baby. They said that I had to wait for the epidural, which was like a sedative a bit, like that numbed my legs. They said I had to wait for that to wear off, and I said, listen, you take me now, I'm going to throw myself off this bed and I will drag myself there. So they eventually took me on the bed, and I saw my daughter for the first time. And just like any other mother, you know, I looked into my daughter's eyes and instantly I loved her. She was my baby and I was her mum, and I just loved her, just like, you know, I love my son. And the fact that she was so tiny, like she weighed half a bag of sugar, and I was just so amazed by her and just so in love with her and just so happy that she had survived. And I was just so thankful to God, and I was just like, you know, believed 100% she was going to survive. Until like the second day she started to have seizures, and the seizures were long. She had one that lasted 12 hours. And I just remember screaming all night, crying. My best friend, she came to the hospital and she just supported me and she prayed with me and she held me whilst I cried. And, you know, she's like one of the bestest friends anyone could ask for, because through everything she never left my side. She stayed loyal to me all the way through, and a lot of my friends from church, because I had backslid, they fell away. And, you know, I don't blame them. But yeah, they distanced themselves for whatever reason. But she just stuck by me. She never left my side. And in this time where I really needed her, she was there for me. Like, all night she stayed with me. And I'd made a decision to switch off the life support the next day, because I just said to God, you know, she's on life support. If you want her to live, when I turn that off, let her live. If that's your will. But if it's not your will, let her go. I'd rather her go to you than live a life of suffering. And if she's going to suffer and she's going to have no quality of life, then just take her. And I remember saying that to God and making my mind up completely. And the next day I went downstairs to the hospital and I told them to turn off the life support. I had all of my family come. There were about 20 of us, and we all held her and sang to her and kissed her as she slipped away into eternity. And that was that. And I gave her a bath once she had passed. And I left the hospital without my baby. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder not long after that, because of all the trauma that I'd been through with the birth, the death of my best friend, the operation, then watching her die. It was all very traumatic, and my mind couldn't process everything that had happened. So it was almost like I kept reliving every moment because I couldn't grasp what had happened. Like, it was really bad. And then because I didn't deal with that post-traumatic stress disorder, and it wasn't really treated, and nothing seemed to work, I went to counselling groups, I went to groups for people that had lost their kids, I'd been to cognitive behaviour therapy. None of it worked. You know, I just wanted to drink. So this is when my drinking got really out of control, and I started drinking like crazy. Every day I was like downing bottles of vodka. I was drinking crazy. I was driving when I was drinking. I was just being absolutely crazy. I was out of my mind. My mum was worried about me. I couldn't look after my son. My mum had to look after him. I didn't even live at home for about 2 months, 3 months after it, because they just could see that I wasn't capable. I didn't eat. All I did was drink, go out to the clubs, get drunk, and just try to be somewhere where I couldn't think. And in the club, the music was so loud, it would stop me from thinking, it would stop me from remembering, it would stop me from feeling that pain. So that was the place where I wanted to be all the time. And people would think, oh, she's just lost a baby and she's up in the club partying. But no, that was my place, because when I wasn't there, I just wanted to die. I tried to commit suicide. I don't even know if I really wanted to commit suicide or if I just wanted to let people know how much I was hurting. I think it was a bit of both, but I didn't really care if I did die. And I tried that twice or once I tried that. Other times I'd just drink myself into oblivion. Then it got to the point when I went home that I couldn't drink because of my son. So what I would do was I'd take him to school in the morning, and it was like a ritual. I'd smoke a spliff, I'd take a sleeping tablet, I'd have a shot of vodka, and I would sleep all day. And then at 3 o'clock I'd pick him up and act like everything was okay, and then I'd put him to bed at 7:30, and then I would take out my sleeping tablet, I would take out my shot of vodka and my spliff, and I would sleep. And that was like my routine for about 6 months, until I started getting involved with guys again. There was a particular guy that I used to see before, that guy that had the girlfriend that I got beat up over. Yeah, him. He knew that I was hurting, and whatever, I'd explained to him what was going on. I'd reached out to him, and he pretended that he cared and he wanted to help me and he wanted to comfort me, but really just wanted to take advantage, just like the others. So he took advantage, then he got off and left me. So I went back to my boomerang, didn't I? My comfort zone, back to this destructive relationship. And I thought everything was good, but he just continued to hurt me. He continued to be abusive. He continued to treat me badly. He continued to make me feel horrible about myself. He continued to put me down. So I split up with him. And when I split up with him, I remember feeling like I was free and really going for it in the clubs. I started sleeping around. I remember the one night we went out, and we went to this club, and the gang that was in the club didn't get along with the people that I was with, and we got shot at, and there were machine guns going off, shooting at the cars and all sorts. And I was that drunk, I was just laughing my head off, unaware of the dangers. And I just continued to play with my life, continued to nearly die every time I got drunk, put myself in stupid positions, stupid dangerous situations. I started working in a strip club. Not long after that, I just thought, you know what, I can't take this life anymore. I was doing bank scams, I was growing weed, I was doing everything. And I just decided that, you know what, I can't live like this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. And I called out to God and I said, God, I need you to help me. I need you to get me out of this. But I wasn't really ready, even though I'd said it. And I said, God, you know, I'm not ready to let go of this job, because I love the money, and I'm not ready to let go of this guy, this new guy that I was with, who was just as abusive as the rest. And I said I wasn't ready to let go of him because I thought I loved him, and I need you to help me, God. So I gave that to God. and that same night, or was it a few nights after, I got sacked from the club. So in my rebellion, I told myself, right, at this point I was also taking cocaine as well as other drugs. So I decided that night that I was going to take loads of drugs. So I started taking balloons, I was taking cocaine, I was taking MDMA, I was drunk, I was drinking loads. And I remember the Holy Spirit telling me that, you know what, you're going to die in your sin if you don't turn your back on this stuff soon. You need to give your life back to God. And it was as clear as day. And I remember telling this guy as we were in the club, we were in the car, we come out of the club and we were doing drugs in the car, we were taking coke, and I remember telling him what the Holy Spirit had spoke to me about, and he said that he felt the same way. I hope he watches this. I'm saved now. And we both agreed that we were going to go to church the next day and give our lives to God. I knew the Holy Spirit was calling me. So stupidly I said to him, all right then, let's take loads of drugs and get as high as we can, because we're going to give our life to God tomorrow. So we did, and I came out the club about 12:30 in the afternoon, so I'd missed the morning service. And the evening service came and I made it there. I still just stunk of alcohol, I was still a bit high, but I knew I needed to give my life to God, and I knew I was serious, and I gave my life to God that day. And, you know, God gave me the strength to get out of that relationship. I was on medication for personality disorder at that point as well, because my mental health had just deteriorated. Within 6 months I was off that medication. Within 6 months I was no longer addicted to weed. Within 6 months, within a day, I'd never touched, from the day I gave my life to God, I never touched cocaine again, never touched ecstasy again. You know, God just set me free from everything. You know, all of the hurt, all of the pain, it's gone. It's gone. Like, I'm healed, I'm delivered. All of that pain, all of that unforgiveness, all of that hurt, all of that bitterness, all of that grief, all of that, it's gone. Jesus has healed me, and you know, he's completely set me free. My mind right now is so much at peace, it's unreal. My life is so blessed, and this is what my blog is about. Just watching how God has changed my life, watching how God has touched me, watching how God has set my feet on solid ground, and just showing the world that living for Christ, you are never a loser. You can never lose when you're living for God. You will always be winning. And this is my life, you know, I'm winning because I'm winning, and I'm winning with Christ. You know, I'm happy, I'm at peace, I've got joy, and all of this stuff is found in the Lord. You know, I'm just so happy. And I hope my blog shows you that, and I hope that as you watch my life that you will just be inspired, you know, to just give Jesus a try, because he will take every mess, he will take every hurt, and he'll turn it around for good. And I'm telling you this from experience, that, you know, I was probably one of the worst kind of sinners, and probably any sin you think of, I've done it or I've been close to it. But you know what, I'm free. I'm free. I'm free from needing a man. I'm free from needing love. I'm free from feeling like I have to give sex to get love. I'm free from, you know, hating myself. I'm free from destroying myself. I'm free from, you know, not loving myself. You know, I love myself now. I have self-worth. I never had any of that in the world. And, you know, God has given me all of this stuff. And, you know, my life is blessed. My life is happy. And I'm free. Thanks for listening.